water study and then open it all up for questions.
Thank you. Promise to come back. But you have one up there too. That too.
She's going to come up with a presentation on that.
Great.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. So, yeah, my name is Peter Linderoth. I work with Save the Sound. Hopefully some of you have heard of us. Yes? Okay, good. Yes, I got some hands in the back. Good, thanks. I oversee our water quality monitoring. Really love doing what I'm doing. Been there for about 5 years. I grew up on the Sound. It's a perfect place for me to be. And anyone else from Fairfield? I'm from Fairfield County, that neck of the woods. Yeah, do you recognize this lighthouse?
I don't live there, but.
Oh, okay. Which lighthouse is this? No, I was up talking to the woman back there that was looking at. Anyhow, it's Cops Lighthouse. I spend a lot of time out on the water, so just the point is I love working at Save the Sound and overseeing this program. I'm going to be talking about the Unified Water Study. Tracy mentioned it today in her talk, and I'm just going to go into it in a little bit of detail. Paul could probably lead this presentation. He's seen me do something similar maybe 10 times now, but specifically we're going to be talking about water quality monitoring and Long Island Sound embayments. So an overview of what we'll be discussing today, and I know we'll take questions at the end, but if anyone's really itching to say something, please feel free to interrupt me. I'm going to talk a little bit about UWS study development. It was a long time, a lot of time put into study development. Boots on the water, like this sampler from New England Science and Sailing, one of our partner groups, and next steps for the study, and then I'd love to take some questions and comments after that. So I really can't talk about the UWS without briefly mentioning the Long Island Sound Report Card, which was another project that I worked on and that Save the Sound harvests now or holds on to. The Long Island Sound Report Card is exactly what it sounds like, right? It's a report card for Long Island Sound. It's very specifically looking at the open water of Long Island Sound. You can see in the map here, the embayments or the bays and harbors have been removed, right? I actually personally did that in GIS with Dr. Badri, snipping them out, right? But we did that for a reason, and I'll talk about that. But the Long Island Sound Report Card is really important to remember. It grades open water data provided by DEEP. They have a very robust open water quality monitoring data program in place. And also from IEC, Interstate Environmental Commission, and New York City, DEP, they do a lot of monitoring in this area, in the Narrows. So the last report card, we brought a huge stack of them too, so if anyone wants to take one home with you, please, they're on the table in the back. Was a 10-year analysis, and you can see we're seeing some pretty big improvements, actually significant improvements. We ran some statistics on these improvements in the western regions of the Sound, which is fantastic. But the UWS is going to start digging into the bays and harbors and providing data for these bays and harbors where some water quality data gaps frankly exist. I mean, there's over 100 of these waterways out there. They're not all receiving the regular monitoring that the Open Sound receives. So it's filling the margins. And Tracy, there was someone when we were meeting in Hartford said that who's the guy that works at San Francisco? He's
Phil Trowbridge.
Yeah, he talked about, so he worked in San Francisco and they call their embayments the margins, and that's stuck. I've been calling them margins ever since. So this study is designed to fill those margins of Long Island Sound with empirical water quality data. So what is the UWS? Okay, so I just mentioned it's there to fill these water quality gaps. It's a study designed to assess the ecological or environmental health of Long Island Sound bays and harbors. You can tell my comms team got a hold of me because anytime I say embayment or margin, they're like, no one's going to know what you're talking about. So I have to call them bays and harbors too. And specifically environmental health. So we've been talking a little bit about pathogen indicator bacteria. That's not involved in this study at all. This is environmental health indicators, and we wanted to make it achievable for as many groups as possible. Maybe not all, but the idea with this study is to get as many groups as possible doing the monitoring the same way, conducting their monitoring the same way. And as you can imagine, to design something like that took a while. This wall behind me wouldn't fit all the sticky notes and things that we had in this 2-year process from academics and agency representatives, funders, and other community sampling groups that all, said, hey, we think you should go this way. We think you should do these parameters. And it was quite the process. The states participated, Connecticut, New York, the city, EPA, I mean, really, it was lots of meetings, lots of webinars, and we really wanted this consensus, though. It was really important that we had this consensus on what we would be doing moving forward. It's really, once it's stuck, it's hard to change things. We do. I'm okay with change, but we really want to make sure we got our foot out the door correctly when we started. And when all the dust settled, and there was some dust, it was decided that the study would be divided into 2 tiers. A tier 1, which is baseline for all the groups that are participating, includes dissolved oxygen, turbidity, which is water clarity, chlorophyll A, qualitative macrophytes, which is literally a sum, none, lots assessment, and then temp and salinity, because those are pretty easy to throw in, but they're also important. And tier 2 was decided this would be something that would be rolled out for groups that have some monitoring experience. It's more technical, it's easier to make mistakes, frankly. And that involves continuous dissolved oxygen monitoring, quantitative macrophytes, so taking it from sun, none, lots assessments to video surveys of the bottom of the bays and harbors, looking for % coverage at stations, and then nutrients, specifically nitrogen and phosphorus, and lots of those species of those 2 nutrients. It's a 6-month monitoring season. It runs from May to October. Basically, groups are out twice a month, although if they're doing tier 2, they're out much more than that, all following a similar sampling plan, which I can talk about a little bit. And the idea, of course, is to get apples to apples. Now, not all embayments are the same, so there's not 2 similar colored apples here, but we want to be able to make comparisons between the Long Island Sound embayments that are being monitored in this study. So another important thing on this is that it has a quality assurance project plan that's in place. Save the Sound administers it. It's a big part of my job, actually, is making sure that this quality assurance project plan stays updated, stays approved by the EPA, who is our only funder now for this study. All the funds come straight through the EPA. And this really strengthens the data. Look, I'm also a firm believer of no data is bad data. Maybe I shouldn't say bad, but I think all information is good information. But to have this entire study under one quality assurance project plan, I've been told, and Tracy hopefully can support this, I mean, it helps the states use the data, it helps the EPA use the data, it just helps it get integrated into management plans. It's a lot of work too, but I think it's an important step. A quick overview of the growth, the timeline. 2015 is when Save the Sound picked up the report card from, I think it was the University of Maryland. So 2015 that happened, and we instantly started talking about this UWS and really just instantly got on it. There was a lot of talk about making this happen, lots of meetings in between. 2016, 3 very brave groups trusted us and piloted all these procedures. Then after the pilot, we went back and tweaked and fine-tuned them. 2017, it rolled out officially with 11 groups participating in 21 embayments. And then Save the Sound piloted the Tier 2 parameters that I mentioned earlier. 2018, we were up to 20 monitoring groups in 36 embayments, and then there was some shuffling, but in 2019, we're currently at 22 monitoring groups with 37 Tier 1 embayments and 13 Tier 2 embayments. So what's that look like? This is what it looks like. I didn't pick red. I know we're a report card group. I didn't pick red because they're all failing, okay? I should change the color of that, but hopefully you can get a good sense. This red, it does stick out, of where we are in this study. So the 22 groups are monitoring these embayments. We have most of the North Shore of Long Island covered, which is great. Lots of Western Sound covered. I'd love to fill in some of the central Connecticut areas, so if you know any groups that might help us with that. Oh, look at the hands. Okay, good. All right, well, wait till the end of the presentation to volunteer anybody. I'll go into what they have to do, but thank you. And then, of course, Eastern Connecticut as well. So these are all the Tier 1 embayments. And Tier 2 are these yellow circles. So these are where the embayments are not only getting that Tier 1 application, but also the continuous DO, the nutrients, and the quantitative macrophyte assessments too, surveys. Well, here are all the groups. And I don't expect you to read all this, but we'll send it out as a PDF. If people are wondering who's involved in this study, you can take a look. What I really love about this list, and I can maybe point a couple things out, I don't mean to just circle Save the Sound. I do love Save the Sound, but there's nonprofit groups, traditional nonprofits like Save the Sound, Harbor Watch, Maritime Aquarium. But when you start to really look, you can see there's 3 municipalities in the study: Town of Darien, Town of Fairfield, Town of Stratford. Interstate Environmental Commission is in the study. So it's a really great mix of kind of your traditional water advocacy group, your municipal group, a federal funded group, and then 100% volunteer groups like Cush are in this study as well, all following the same procedures and delivering that high quality data. All right, so here's the fun. I get to show a bunch of pictures now too, which is fun. The execution. So here's smiling people at work, undertaking the monitoring. It's good to have a nice solid plan in place that keeps your monitoring groups smiling. And then we're also the technical support. So if groups ever do have trouble, they can come right to us, and we help them with their instruments and following procedures. All right, so execution. So make sure to pay close attention here before you volunteer your best friend to do this study. A couple things that all the groups do need to do to make sure that they can stay involved. One of the first things that I mentioned to all the groups really when they're thinking of joining is that you have to be out at sunrise and within 3 hours of sunrise to do the dissolved oxygen monitoring. And so everything else is done at that time too. So if a group can't do that, they're not willing to get up early, then it doesn't work for that
You
group.
have to do math at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Yes, you do. Alicia's one of our samplers. That's right, you do have to do math at 5 in the morning. But it's a pretty time to be out, right? The sound is usually very calm. That's my selling point. I probably would have been a decent salesman. I get people hooked on things like that. But you know, it is what it is. So everyone's out early in the morning to collect their DO data. This figure got a little skewed, but this is from our pilot season. This is looking at continuous dissolved oxygen in Mamaroneck Harbor, so my team was out doing this. And you can see how there's huge, I guess I should explain it. My professors would give me crap if I don't. The blue here is dissolved oxygen concentration. The yellow is saturation. This is also adjusted for salinity. Everything in between these two black lines is okay. Everything above this black line is protective of marine life based on state criteria. Everything below is hypoxic and anoxic. And you can see how dissolved oxygen, this is over the course of a month, about 2 months actually. And down here we have days. It's not one day, it's like 3 days in between, but you get the point. It fluctuates, right? In shallow water systems, dissolved oxygen fluctuates. Does anyone know why that is? Why does DO fluctuate in shallow water systems in particular? It does in deep water too, but because of plants, right, and photosynthesis. When you have a lot of shallow water, there tends to be seaweed and phytoplankton, both going through photosynthesis, producing oxygen during the day, and then if you have a lot of plants, literally vacuuming that stuff out at night when they go through respiration. That's why we go out early in the morning. If my team is out at 5, or Alicia's out at 5 doing their embayment, but another group is out in a different embayment, but they're like, they didn't set their alarm, they're out at 2 p.m. the same day, those data are no longer comparable. And that's really important for us to have that comparability. Achievability, all the groups fill out a sampling plan like I mentioned. This is in the QOP. We send this to them, they send it back to us in some form, shape, or fashion, and we say, yeah, your sampling plan meets the minimum requirements of the QOP, great, or maybe they exceed it. And so everyone's on the same page on what they need to do for those 6 months. Station selection is a big one for this too. We use an EPA method for station selection where we use a 0.42 hexagonal grid and then generate stations in the grid to set the stations, sample stations. And all embayments are treated the same. This is Darien Harbor, pretty small, right? But minimum of 4 stations, so it's got 2 hexes, 4 stations that get monitored. This is Little Neck Bay, much bigger, broken into 2 reporting regions, and you can see the stations in Little Neck Bay. So all the embayments in the study go through this process with me, our science advisors, Dr. Jamie Vaudry and Dr. Krumholtz, who used to be with NOAA in the Long Island Sound study, just to make sure that we're getting representative sampling. We don't want biased sampling. There's a tendency, not all groups, but there's a tendency for lots of groups to be like, oh, there's a pipe there, let's go sample it. And there's certainly a place for that, right? There's an outfall there, it looks suspicious, let's go sample it. But this study is meant to be representative. We want representative conditions of all these waterways. Oh, and the groups have a lot of input here because we don't know what all these waterways look like. So this is all done with the groups. We don't say, here are your stations, have at it. It's a back and forth process, which is important. We hold annual trainings. These are mandatory for our vets and our new groups, really important. We held 5 in 2019. We also do field audits, which that's new 2 years ago. Really important, where we go out to the groups and kind of say, all right, show us how you calibrate your instruments, show us how you sample. And we do those early in the season, so if things at training didn't stick, we can correct them early so they don't progress on through October. And we do catch things, even really experienced groups, It's important to get, and we field audit ourselves, so it's not like we're not doing this to ourselves too. All of this is mandatory. It ensures COP compliance and good rate toss form. That's part of this qualitative seaweed assessment. And everyone wants to be an aspiring macrophyte fishing person like Elena, our environmental analyst. Those rakes are pretty damn heavy, by the way, when they're full. She was like gritting her teeth. Hurry up, take the damn picture. But she's tough. So with the training, and this kind of flows into the training, we actually provide all the equipment and supplies also that are necessary for this study. So when I'm talking with people, and they're like, well, we don't have this or we don't have that piece of equipment, it's all taken care of, right? We loan out everything from the sonde to the calibration standards to the filters needed for chlorophyll, the syringes for processing, Masterflex pumps, if you're familiar, for nutrient sampling. We give out the loggers. Everything's provided. Maybe some money groups ask for pens and write in the rain paper, and that's fine. But everything that's really essential is provided to the groups for conducting this, and that really helps with lowering the study expenses. Early on, with the Long Island Sound Funders Collaborative, before we went to the EPA, they'd be like, well, give the groups what they need to buy and have them request the money from us. And some of the groups looked at me like, you're crazy. And I need like 6 or 7 different accounts and this and that. By putting it all under one roof, we really saved a lot of money, frankly, in buying this stuff in bulk. We also really eased groups' entry process, and it also helps the comparability because we know and we take care of all this stuff in the off season, making sure it's all working properly. We have one project lab that we contract with. It's a New York ELAP certified lab. That's really important. Is anyone from New York here? That's really important to DEC that your nutrient samples are through ELAP. So